Hello and welcome back to another episode of wjlive powered by the Western Journal. I'm Joey Chester, manager of publishing operations at the Western Journal, and I'm joined by our star reporter, Grant. Grant does amazing work for the Western Journal. We have a really cool episode for you today. We're going to talk about something that I think the Western is kind of the only media outlet, both mainstream and within conservative media, talking about. I don't know if you've seen, there's been this really bizarre string of food processing plant disasters across the U.S. I know that sounds kind of weird, like what, like food processing plants, but I mean, this is something that has real life implications on Americans, and no one is talking about it and has real consequences. And the fact checkers are out in full force on this one. Fact checkers have already determined that this is just a conspiracy theory cooked up by right-wing radical Tucker Carlson. And, you know, when they come after Tucker and they call something a conspiracy theory, there's probably some truth to it.
Well, they're getting pretty good at it because, like you said, a lot of people haven't even heard of this yet, or if they have, it's just been kind of a passing mention, like, oh, this is kind of a weird thing that's happening. But now the fact checkers are trying to get out ahead of the narrative. They're trying to cut off the narrative before we even can talk about it at all. So they're getting pretty quick on the draw there.
Yeah, it's like if you even begin to question anything, they just jump in and say, oh, no, you can't question that. No. It's like we were talking earlier, there's a fact check going around now about that movie, 2000 Mules, and they're literally fact-checking a movie trailer and saying, oh, no, that's not real. So this is just how they are. But there's been over, I think, 24 or close to 24 food processing plant fires or disasters. There was a case where a plane flew into a food processing plant in Idaho, and then within days, a plane flew into a food processing plant in Georgia. I'm not sure that planes just fly into food processing plants and, it's just another day in America. And this isn't isolated to one area of the country. We're talking about East Coast, West Coast. I think even in Canada, it's happening. Large processors, small processors. It's alarming. And this all comes as we've been warned that a food shortage is coming. Even the president has warned about this. We've talked about implications that the Russia-Ukraine war is going to have on food supply. So, Grant, why do you think no one wants to talk about this?
I don't know. I mean, I think that in order for there to be, these fact checkers who don't want it to get out and they're trying so hard to not let this story out, like you said, that makes me think that there's some sort of, nefarious thing going on, some sort of story behind it more than just a series of coincidences. And I already would think that because if you're talking about, fires happening or things of that nature, sure, that happens at food processing plants. That happens everywhere, I'm sure, but especially at somewhere that has big machinery and all these type of things. I'm sure that there are fires and things like that happen. But when you have multiple planes crashing into food processing plants, I feel like the odds of that happening in different parts of the country within days of each other are just so slim. I feel like there's got to be something going on. And like you said, I feel that these fact checkers typically have a left-wing bias. And so if they're trying to cover something up, then they're probably trying to cover it up because it reflects poorly on the left in some way.
It blows my mind. They're trying to say that what we're seeing is just totally normal. Yeah, there's nothing suspicious. Yeah, food processing plants, they just randomly combust. And planes, they just randomly fly into these. And no, you conservative are wrong for questioning the reality of things. It's like they don't even live in the same world as us. It's super alarming. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, if there's something nefarious behind this? If someone is causing this, or some organization or group of people, and the fact checkers and all the left-wing media are in on it, what's the incentive for them to do this? What's the incentive to cause a food shortage? I mean, all I can think is it's more power for them, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you did have Biden warning that food shortages are coming and that they're going to be real. I think we talked about at the time that being just such a shocking thing coming from the
Yeah.
president of the United States. I mean,
Just
you
admitted it.
have the previous president where people had their issues with him and his Twitter and whatever, and him saying mean things. But under this administration, we're seeing basic necessities being hard to come by because of the failures of this administration. And so I think when you put it in that context, it just makes you realize how deep-seated this problem really is. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen research to be able to connect these food processing disasters to food shortages that Biden has talked about, but I feel like it's at least suspicious that it's coming around the same time. These things are in the same sort of category. So I don't know. Something feels like it's off.
Yeah, and it just drives me crazy that the media, the left, has decided that now we live in a world where you can't question something. Like, if your gut tells you something isn't right here, you're just not allowed to question it. You're wrong. You're a radical right-wing conspiracy theorist immediately. I want to share with you guys just something that shows you how real these disasters are. You know, it's not just a potential loss in food. There's also people losing their jobs, and the time that it takes to rebuild these places is slow. So there was a company in Wisconsin that had to lay off 20 people because they no longer had a facility to manufacture at, and they lost over $1 million in equipment. And I think the building itself that wasn't even covered by insurance. That's $1 million that they have to come up with. Then there was another company that laid off, I think, over 200 people. Yeah, 230 people. They had to lay off their entire workforce because this happened. So now not only do you have potential food shortages, but you're also talking about people out of their jobs. Which brings me into, I think there's 5 signs that a food shortage is coming. And I think that's just important to talk about because this is just one part of it, and it makes it worse. And one of them is straight up the sanctions on Russia because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm some big Putin fan or something, but those sanctions have real-life impacts. And that brings us into the fertilizer shortages that we're seeing. Russia is a huge manufacturer of fertilizer, and that production now has been severely limited. And that includes production for farmers in America. And so what happens when farmers can't produce crops because they don't have fertilizers? Well, that's less supply, and the demand stays the same. So prices go up. There's been corn and soybean farmers warning us that this summer, Americans' grocery bills are going to go up by $1,000 a month. Who can afford a $1,000 increase in their grocery bills? Oh, so then if you turn away from fresh food and you go to, some more manufactured processed food, oh, well, guess what? The food processing plants are blowing up, so those prices are up too. So you're screwed. You can't eat, or maybe you can't go to work then. The third one is the price of diesel in the United States. Again, no one seems to be talking about this. The price of diesel is now over $5 a gallon. Truckers have to pay like $1,200 to fill up a tank, which is crazy. So where do you think that cost gets passed on to? It gets passed on to the consumer. It gets passed on to us. Or the truckers just choose not to drive because they can't afford to. And then there's, again, less food. Then number 4, what we just talked about, the fires at food processing plants across the country. And then number 5, this one's super bizarre to me, and local outlets are talking about this. But did you know, until we talked about this, that there was a huge outbreak of bird flu in the U.S. right now?
I actually did know that, and I'll tell you why. It's because I am a big sports fan.
Oh.
And at the Minnesota Timberwolves, I guess it was first at the play-in game and then in the first round of the playoffs, their owner apparently owns a farm or has a big stake in some sort of farm, and they had to kill, I believe it was about 5 million chickens total this guy had to kill because they had the bird flu. And so there were protesters running onto the court. One protester glued herself to the court. Another one chained herself to the basketball hoop.
These people are something.
So there's something. But the more that I'm reading about this, I'm kind of not sympathetic to their cause, but maybe they're onto something. Maybe if they're saying that it's animal abuse to kill a chicken that it has because it has bird flu, that's just dumb. That doesn't make. Of course, you're going to kill a chicken that has the bird flu because otherwise it's going to give every chicken the bird flu. So you have to do that. But the fact that they are kind of raising the alarm that something's going on, maybe they were onto something a little bit earlier than we were. Honestly.
I mean that's a good point. I actually hadn't heard about it until I think yesterday, and I saw some folks on Twitter talking about it. But yeah, you're right. There's millions of chickens being killed across, I think I saw it's up to almost 40 states now, so nearly every state. And that's going to raise poultry prices in the grocery store, and that's problematic. I mean, chicken is usually one of the most affordable meats you can, protein you can buy, and it's going to be more expensive now.
Yeah, so we've already seen red meat going up, and other beef and bacon and all these things going up. Chicken typically has been, like you said, one of the cheaper meats that you can get, and if that starts going up too, then everything's up. I mean, how are you even going to get protein without having to shovel out huge portions of your paycheck?
Yeah, I mean, how are Americans going to eat? They can't get processed food. They can't get fresh food. Farmers can't get the fertilizer they need to make their crops, and now chickens are being killed. and also, I think humans can catch the bird flu too.
Oh, that's great. I'm sure that'll be the next thing that will happen.
Yes.
We'll probably need a vaccine for the bird flu.
So there'll be mandatory vaccines for the bird flu. And Dr. Fauci would be 90 years old and still on TV telling us, hey, get your bird flu vaccine. Wave 5 is coming. I can just imagine. So it's alarming. It's really alarming, and I don't know why no one's talking about it. This isn't a left or right issue. At least it shouldn't be, but I guess it has kind of become one. I mean, Grant, do you think a food shortage is coming? Do you think it's going to happen? Are we going to be in panic mode? People panic buying, almost like when COVID started, people running to the grocery store to grab up what they can. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I don't know that we will run out of food or that it will be a shortage to the point that people really need to panic, but I do think that you will see significant price increases because of all those reasons you just talked about, especially diesel prices. And when you think about just the supply being lower and the cost to bring that supply to the consumer being higher, I mean, that's going to get passed on to the consumer in one way or another. So I do think prices will go up, and we probably will see, if I had to guess, some panic buying like we saw during COVID, but I think as during COVID, probably similarly this time, it won't be completely necessary. I think it's more people blowing it out of proportion a little bit, like with the toilet paper, when we ran out of toilet paper during COVID, or when a lot of stores did at least. The only reason that they ran out of toilet paper was because everyone went to the store and started buying all the toilet paper that they don't need.
Right.
So I think it won't be necessary to do that kind of panic buying, but if we do see it, then it could actually make it worse because people are buying more than they need, and at that point, it just worsens the food shortage.
Yeah, that's totally. Yeah, I think you're right. The Biden administration, the head of USAID, I think we have a screenshot of our headline about this. She said on looming for food shortages to never let a crisis go to waste. You got to take advantage of the crisis.
Usually when a crisis happens and the Democrats, they always do this. They always try to use it to their advantage. That's not anything new, but usually they hide it a little bit. And the people who are saying never let a crisis go to waste are the Republicans or the conservatives who are pointing out wow, they're using this crisis to forward their agenda. Now I guess they're just saying it out loud. They don't even care to hide it anymore.
No, they don't hide it anymore. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point they've got Bill Gates on TV telling us that we need to eat bugs to survive. That's going to be the future, and sprouts grown in our kitchen is going to be the future, and genetically modified this and that. That's going to be the future to survive. That's what they want. It's the same thing they did with electric cars. oh no, it doesn't matter what the price of gas is. Gas is $5 a gallon. Just buy a $60,000 electric car, you dummy. I mean, that's what they do. They want this like dystopian future in which we don't rely on the land to live. We don't use the natural resources that God made for us. They want us to drive electric cars that we can't afford, and they want us to eat bugs and sprouts and genetically modified food and have 1,500 vaccines in us, developed very sketchily, and that's the future. That's the future.
I'll tell you what I don't want. I do not want this stupid plant-based meat. You ever had this plant-based meat? It's some of the worst food I've ever put in my mouth. So I don't know what the benefit to the. I had to know.
Try it?
I had to know, and it was terrible. I don't know if there's any benefit to the government wanting us to eat that sort of thing, but that's kind of what I think of when you bring up
I think so too.
These sort of things that the government wants us to put in our bodies. I don't know why, but that's what I think of, and it's disgusting. I don't want that in my body.
Yeah, and they do a lot of this in the name of climate change. AOC says we have to stop eating meat because meat contributes to climate change. I think it was is it Prince Charles last week that said that we need to put masks on cows.
Yeah, I did see that.
to help prevent against climate change. This is how these people think. Like, if you showed a liberal that, they say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's what we should do." But yeah, it is. I think all of it, even the food shortage stuff and taking advantage of it, it's all rooted in this like radical environmentalism. Like we have to save the environment by stopping doing everything that we have done for hundreds of years. We can't live off the land anymore, anything like that.
Do you think that could be a benefit of having less food processing plants? Are they bad for the environment? I can't assume that they're great for the environment.
I imagine they are bad for the environment, and I think a lot of these were like fresh food processing plants. They dealt with things like fresh meat, fresh chicken, fruits and vegetables. I think one of them was a big potato processing plant. I think another was a big onion processing plant. And I mean, also think about the people that the left hates. They hate blue collar farmers and ranchers in the country. Like these are the people that they absolutely despise and they think contribute to climate change and are stupid. So yeah, I mean, maybe that is a part of it. I think these things are bad for the environment. Then they can rebuild, and they can rebuild with their, Beyond Meat, Impossible Meat. Yeah, which has all kinds of horrible stuff in it. Like, isn't there estrogen in it that's like it's really bad for you? So maybe they're going to make all men into women that way. That's going to be their next plan. I predicted it here. But no, I mean it really makes sense. And again, it's all done in the name of environmentalism. And there's another thing here, and there's a lovely fact check going on about this right now.
It might get put on this very episode.
It might. Wjlive. This might be the only time you see this episode because it could very well get taken down because we're right-wing radicals. I've been called a nut job conspiracy theorist before.
I heard it with my own 2 years.
Yeah, you did. So Bill Gates is buying up a ton of farmland in the U.S. And it seems every time this is talked about, this fact check comes out, and it's like, Bill Gates is not the largest landowner in America. He's the largest private farmland owner. Like,
oh, that's better.
Like, and no one's making the claim that he's the largest landowner. They're just saying, hey, it's kind of weird that this billionaire who has, no interest in farming is now the largest private farm owner in the country. But and all these fact checkers are rushing to his defense. And Bill Gates, radical environmentalist, he thinks that the world's overpopulated and we'll all die at some point. The world's going to end in 12 years. And
this is the same guy,
vaccine guy.
I was going to say, I know that
very
there are
out of
fact
shape
checks going around on this too, but this is the same guy who has some questionable views on vaccines as well, and
yes,
things that we should put in our body.
Oh yeah, he wants all kinds of horrible things put in our body. So it makes sense, okay, so the radical left, they get Bill Gates to buy up a bunch of farmland, and because farmers and ranchers aren't treated, it's really hard to be a farmer or rancher. I'm from Montana, And a lot of people in Montana are farmers and ranchers and know what they go through. They're not living a life of luxury. So, Bill Gates comes along and Bill Gates offers to buy your farm or your ranch for a ton of money, millions of dollars more than you would normally get for it. And you walk away with a ton of money. Would you sell to him? I think a lot do.
Yeah.
And then Bill Gates, you think Bill Gates is going to be out there working the land, keeping your farm going? No. So Bill Gates then shuts it down, and there's, another farm taken out from the country. Or, maybe Bill Gates says, no, we've got to farm our genetically modified vegetables or fruits here. Or no, we need to manufacture Beyond Meat here. There's also, like in Montana, there's a big leftist environmental org called the American Prairie Reserve that's doing the same thing. They're buying up ranches and farms that have been there for hundreds of years, and they're decommissioning them and turning them just into these massive swaths of private land. Like, this is what the left is doing in America. They are hijacking farming and ranching operations from blue-collar Americans and bringing them to the hands of the wealthy. And like I said, no one's except for us is talking about this. So the Bill Gates thing, I feel gross thinking about it.
It doesn't really make sense to me why environmentalists are so against tending the land, farming the land. It seems like that's something that's happened throughout all of human history. I mean, we see it. Obviously, we come from biblical background, so we see it in the Bible.
Yes.
From the beginning of time until now. Farming the land is a good thing. It's something that God wants us to do. He talks about it in the Bible, and he talks about the gifts that he's given us for food and everything that we need. He's provided through the land. So I understand that there's tractors and machinery that I'm sure they think is bad for the environment, but at its core, you would think that farming would be something that environmentalists should be for, because you're treating the land well. You're doing what the land is meant to do.
Yeah, I mean, you want land to just be overgrown with weeds and stuff, and no one gets any benefit from it. What's the point of land then? But yeah, I mean, I think, Grant, you're getting into this larger idea that I've talked about a lot. The left likes to portray themselves as environmentalists when there's nothing true about it. Conservative, we conserve. And I think conservatives are conservationists. I mean, look at Teddy Roosevelt. He conserved so much public land that we still enjoy today. And you think about red states and blue states and things like pollution and how the state is taken care of. Look at every major city in America that's like ultra polluted and dirty. There's trash on the streets. The air quality is terrible. It's all run by Democrats. Where do Democrats want to live? They don't want to live in the rural areas where the environment's really good. No, they want to live in the middle of cities where the air quality sucks and you don't see anything green anytime. So the left, that they're not the ones that want to protect the environment. It's actually the right, and we're the ones that believe in responsible logging so that there's not wildfires in states. Look at California. It burns down 365 days a year because Newsom's an idiot and he doesn't take care of the land.
Yeah, and then he goes out there and he lies about the things that he's done. That happened last year. He said he's tended or whatever. He's treated this amount of land for wildfires.
Right.
Turns out it wasn't not even close to that amount of acres that he said. It was way less. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but he basically just lied about how much land he had treated for wildfires, and then they had a bunch of wildfires. So, I mean, it's like...
That's what happens.
These things happen. You can predict them happening.
Yeah, so a wildfire is better for the environment. All the smoke, that's better than, responsibly logging the land, giving people jobs because of it, and then giving, materials for building things, and then that forest doesn't burn down, and actually it's more usable because there's less trees, there's more space for people to recreate on. I mean, it blows my mind. Have you ever been to North Dakota or Texas or something, a state where there's a lot of oil drilling? You can see in the oil wells.
Texas definitely.
The left thinks if you they paint this picture that oil fields have black oil running all through them and there's pollution in the sky. Really, you're just driving along the highway and you look and there's just a well out in the field and that's it. They're responsibly taking care of the land. So it drives me crazy when the left portrays themselves as environmentalism, and everything that we've talked about in this episode, things the left wants to do, taking advantage of a crisis, it's all done in the name of climate change and environmentalism. It's all fake. They're all wrong. They're liars.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the South,
Yeah.
and there's, farmers markets, fresh produce, all this kind of thing. And pretty much every person that I interacted with who farmed or who grew produce or whatever it was, pretty much every single one of them is a conservative. You don't really see a leftist farmer very often, and I think there's a reason for that. I mean, like you said, the left does not like blue-collar workers, farmers, people who are out in the fields. They don't like them, and so they try to present themselves as environmentalists. But to me, every person that I've ever met who truly cares for the land is a conservative. So I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, and all the places in the country with like these great outdoors and people who live in the communities, like I grew up just outside of Glacier Park in Montana, which is one of the most visited national parks in the country, and the county is like 70% conservative. When you think they're just destroying the national park? No, it looks great. The environment's nice. And like you said, they hate the people who are working the land. The left, I think they're really evil people. They are. They want to, I think, destroy the country from the inside out. I wish they would just go and live in their dystopian cities and stick to themselves and never see a piece of green grass again in their lives, and they can be miserable because nothing matters to them. Yeah,
I mean, I think that a perfect example of how much they hate these blue-collar farmers is Ohio, which is great. I mean, congratulations to him.
Great news. Yeah.
But he wrote this book about basically his life growing up in a blue-collar sort of society, and it wasn't even a political book. It was just about kind of his life growing up and how he was brought up in America, and people inferred that it was talking about more Trump conservative type counties, and they started hating him. I mean, Netflix made a movie about it, and people got so mad. It was called Hillbilly Elegy, and people got so mad that it existed, and they said that it was just propaganda for Trump, and literally all it was just talking about like more rural areas in America and how life is there. And people hated it. They didn't even want it to be allowed. They didn't want people to be able to learn how things are there. They'd rather just be able to, I guess, lie about them so that nobody understands the truth about these areas.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want to protect the environment and have a clean, conserved future, you live the conservative biblical lifestyle. That's just the truth of it. So that was a really great discussion, I think, that tied right into this potential food shortage that we're running into. We really do like to talk about the issues that matter here, that impact heartland America. And unfortunately, big tech, the fact checkers, they hate us talking about these issues. I'm just waiting for them to slap us with a fact check for talking about the food processing plant things and Bill Gates and all that. So, if you want to support Western Journal, because what we do here isn't cheap, and like I said, we're always fighting these other forces, and we really are just a small family-owned company, you can head to westernjournal.com/join. There are a lot of options on there on how you can support us. We would really appreciate it. We love what we do. We think what we do really matters, and we want to be able to amplify your voices, the voices of Heartland America, but we do need your help to do it. So again, go to westernjournal.com/join. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you back here on Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much.